Our next speaker is Dr. DeGioia, the President, DeGioia, sorry, I got it wrong again, who has served Georgetown University for nearly a quarter century now. To prepare young people for leadership roles in the global community, Dr. DeGioia has expanded opportunities for intercultural and interreligious dialogue, welcomed world leaders to campus, and convened international conferences to address many challenging issues. He is now planning to convene an international conference to continue the dialogue that we are having here, hopefully in March of 2009 and probably even beyond. Dr. DeGioia is the first lay president of a Jesuit university. As such, he places special emphasis on sustaining Georgetown's Catholic and Jesuit identity and its responsibility to serve as a voice and an instrument for justice. He has also been a strong advocate for interreligious dialogue. He is a member of the Order of Malta, a lay religious order of the Roman Catholic Church dedicated to serving the sick and the poor. Dr. DeGioia.
Well, I wish to extend my sincere appreciation to His Royal Highness Prince Ghazi, to Dean Attridge, to Professor Miroslav Volf, and to Reverend Joseph Cumming for our days here together and for this unforgettable experience to deepen our understanding between and among our religious traditions. And I wish to express my further appreciation to all of you for your presentations, your comments, your questions, and for your friendship. I offer my brief reflections this morning from the perspective of a life lived within a university, a Catholic and Jesuit university, in fact, the oldest Catholic university in the United States, founded in 1789, just a few months before the founding of this republic. Georgetown was founded in a state, Maryland, that as a colony was known for its commitment to religious freedom. It was to be Catholic, but open, quote, to students of every religious profession, close quote, our founding documents. And to this day, we have fostered a respect for pluralism and for a commitment to interfaith understanding. Because of a background of more than 3 decades in this university, my comments this morning will reflect a sense of urgency regarding how we move forward beyond dialogue into ways of preparing our young people for lives in which they will be expected to go out and make a difference in the world. I'd like to offer some thoughts of how we might be able to build from our conversation, our dialogue, about how we might move from a common word to some common work. I'd like to offer some suggestions for a new kind of engagement together in the world. And I think you'll see and find in these reflections a very strong resonance with the comments that have been made by many of you over the course of these days. I think for those who work out of the perspective of a university, it is important to step back and reflect for a moment on just how significant it is that we're having this meeting here at Yale University. Professor Volf, in his opening comments on Tuesday, described this moment as one in which the world, particularly the West, is going through a period of desecularization. If we step back a generation, I think we'd agree that such a meeting as this would have been unthinkable when a religious perspective was not viewed as an appropriate framework for intellectual engagement within the university. So what is it about this moment that enables this meeting now? and why is it so significant? On Monday night, Senator Kerry quoted the contemporary novelist Michael Chabon. Who would like to go back and start the 21st century over again? This is a new century, and from the perspective of the academy, if we look back at previous centuries, there were two dominant strains of intellectual engagement: naturalistic epistemology, the methodologies of the natural sciences, and a historicism that dominated in both the social sciences and humanities. Both of these methodologies, the methodologies of the natural sciences and of historicism, severely undermined confidence in religious belief. The secularization that began in the 18th and 19th centuries, coming out of the Enlightenment, pushed religion further and further away from the acceptable terms for intellectual inquiry in the 20th century. In this same century, in which the authority of religion in the West continued to be undermined, 170 million people died at the hands of their own governments throughout our world. Now, I'd like to offer three proposals for how we might be able to move to a common work, for I believe there is work we can do together. The first focuses within the academy. I just stated that 170 million people died at the hands of their governments. For half of the century in which this occurred, we lived under what political scientists would call a growing regime of human rights. This year is the 60th anniversary of the ratification of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now think of the incoherence. A 1948 agreement of all of the nations of the world to a set of universal human rights, and tens of millions dead, billions more dying from chronic poverty within that same time frame. We have a crisis within the regime of human rights. Now, we could discuss at length the nature of this crisis, but at its core may be the question of how one might justify a belief in universal human rights. In the process of drafting the Declaration, much time and effort went into the question of justification. What arguments can we provide to justify our claim for these universal rights? Jacques Maritain took on a special role for UNESCO in engaging in a survey of the greatest thinkers of the world of what are the strong arguments that could be developed to justify the claims for these universal rights. In the end, as you know, the document is silent on the issue. Why? Marianne Glendon recalls in her story about the drafting of the Universal Declaration, Maritain liked to tell the story of how a visitor at one meeting expressed astonishment that champions of violently opposed ideologies had been able to agree on a list of fundamental rights. The man was told, "Yes, we agree about the rights, but on condition no one asks why." Now, recently, some contemporary scholars like Michael Perry have argued that the language of justification always turns on the acknowledgement of the sacredness of human life. Perry argues that it is only the language of faith that provides us with the resources for justifying claims for human rights. The idea of human rights is ineliminably religious, he writes. That is, a fundamental constituent of the idea is the conviction that every human